Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for joining us here on this beautiful Thursday in your nation's capital. Just 2 weeks away from Christmas now, Cassie Smedile. Does that look at you? You get panicked the second I said that.
You have to remind us, Larry.
Isn't it funny? When do you make that turn where, you're like wetting your pants as a child because you're so excited that you're 2 weeks away from Christmas? And or when you become the parent and you're freaked out and stressed that you're 2 weeks away from Christmas?
Yeah, two things. I think kids the day after Halloween become excited for Christmas.
The countdown begins, yes.
And now I realize why every Christmas morning photo, my mom just looks exhausted.
Yes.
God love her.
Well, I don't know about you, but when it comes to Christmas right now, I am in the mood. At 8:05, we're going to speak with K.T. McFarland. We'll talk about, the story we're about to hit right now, the seizure of a Venezuelan oil tanker. Then at 8:35, we're going to tell you the very best Christmas-lit homes in Northern Virginia with journalist Michelle Kettner. All right, let's get to it. Yesterday, an extraordinary moment here. Extraordinary on many respects. I'll detail, I think, why I think it was extraordinary. But what happened was the U.S. forces, law enforcement as well as military, seized a tanker, an oil tanker, off the coast of Venezuela. Here is President Trump announcing it yesterday. Cut 10, please.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
I do love that it was the largest one. You know that they put the proposal in front of the president and said, Mr. President, we've got this tanker here. We think that we can seize it pretty easily. Just one question. Is it the largest tanker ever seized? Because if we're going to seize a tanker, I want it to be the biggest.
It's got to be the best. The best one.
More of Trump yesterday, cut 11.
You see the result, and I guess they probably have released the pictures by now or pretty soon. You'll discuss that with the appropriate people later on, but no, it was seized for a very good reason.
And out of the press pool there, one question. I think it was Mary Margaret O'Connor, if I remember. I haven't heard this cut, but I saw this go by, asking a very pertinent question. Well, what happens to the oil? Cut 12.
Well, what happens to the oil on that ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
What does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You're a good newsman. Just follow the tanker.
Do you know where it was going? Was it going
follow
to
it.
China?
Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Sorry, not Mary Margaret. Obviously, she did ask a question in that exchange, but not that one. You're a newsman. Get a helicopter and follow it. We'll see what happens.
Like a high-speed chase.
All right. So what's really at play here? Well, if you're just catching up on this, there have been oil sanctions put in place against Venezuela. The first economic sanctions were put in place in 2017. Those were backed up with the most robust kind of sanctions you can put against a country in 2019. The Biden administration did not remove those sanctions during their 4 years. They have been in place, but the bottom line is they've never been enforced. We've seen this all the time. We see this with Russia all the time. There's sanctions against Russia. Yeah, the countries who want to play nice, who want to follow the rules, they won't buy Russian oil. They won't buy Venezuelan oil. But there are countries who are doing it. And so the Trump administration decided yes, absolutely, this is an escalation in our, sort of saber rattling here, or a little bit more with Venezuela, as we're actually making good on our efforts to get rid of that corrupt criminal regime and stop all of the havoc that it has been wreaking here on our homeland. We are now actually enforcing with our military might the sanctions that have been in place for over 6 years now in that region. And it needs to be done. Otherwise, what's the point of having these sanctions?
Right. Absolutely right. And you're getting to this point, but who was this oil ultimately feeding? It was going to Cuba,
yes,
where it gets sold on the black market to
yes,
ultimately help China. And round we go. We wonder how these countries are able to permeate, to continue their operations, which are meant to harm us. And it's through the exact turning a blind eye to these sanctions.
That's right. And this is a corrupt kleptocracy down there. It is run by, it was bad enough when it was Chavez, and they're still Marxists, but he was a maniac and he was funding terrorists. Maduro is just a crook. He's a mob boss. And the only way they're keeping their country going is by selling illicit oil and selling drugs. And we're stopping it. Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff for the White House, spoke on this yesterday. Cut 13.
Since President Trump has come into office, Democrats have sided with, at every step of the way, the criminal cartels, the narco-terrorists, and the criminally illegal aliens who deal drugs, narcotics, traffic, weapons, children, and engage in all kinds of crimes against humanity in the United States and throughout the Western Hemisphere. President Trump has directed the Department of War, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice to prioritize the defense of American lives and borders by taking the fight directly to these criminal cartels and these foreign terrorist organizations. You mentioned today the historic action, an interagency operation involving the United States Coast Guard, involving the Department of Justice, involving the Department of War to seize an illicit oil tanker that is directly involved in funding and financing terrorism. So again, these illicit, ill-gotten financial proceeds from these sanctioned transactions are used to finance murder, mayhem, drug trafficking, and terrorism across the Western Hemisphere and directly in the United States.
That's right. And ultimately, the bottom line here is, as you'll hear criticism today of these actions, as we heard last night, is these sanctions either mean something or they don't. There is literally no reason to put a sanction against a country unless you're going to back it up and enforce it. And so that's what they did here. Meanwhile, Cassie, in the background of this story is a compelling, dramatic, this is the stuff of a feature film. Mm-hmm. As you know, the winner of this year's Nobel Peace Prize is one Maria Corina Machado of Venezuela. And by the way, she, upon receiving the Nobel Prize, praised President Trump and America's efforts, Secretary of State Marco Rubio's efforts to try to topple the Maduro regime. She has been an outspoken critic of the regime. She won the Nobel Peace Prize. This week they're giving it away in Oslo. They're awarding the Nobel Peace Prize. And there is a dramatic story from the Wall Street Journal about how she escaped. Venezuela was not going to let her go. It makes her look bad, right? She escaped in the dark of night, got on a boat, traveled, and she had to alert the United States Embassy so that, we didn't blow her boat out of the water. But, of course, we know which boats are the narco-terrorists and which ones aren't. But she escaped and she emerged. No one expected it. It was a complete surprise, but she emerged in Oslo. Actually, she missed it by a day after her daughter received the award. Mm-hmm. But now she has emerged this morning. She actually showed up and gave a speech, and it was an incredible scene. I mean, it really is. I mean, you start to get chills when you think about what she went through to get out of there in the dark of night in disguise. This is truly stuff of movies.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm sure Matt Damon and the Bourne Identity team are already writing the script, but she had to evade 10 military checkpoints, and she was in disguise and to get out to this fishing boat and eventually to a private jet. Just incredible. And an incredible woman.
She is. And if people really do care about this issue, now I'll tell you, I think it's great, and I do care about the issue, and I think that we've neglected Latin America for way too many years. And this is obviously a priority for Marco Rubio. It's a priority for the president. And I think this is great stuff. And it is the makings of the beginning of the end, if not the end of the end, for Maduro, and some relief for the people in that country who have been suffering not only under his kleptocracy, but also under Marxism. But I'll tell you this, as great as these stories are, and the seizure of the tanker and all that stuff, this is going to undermine the president's efforts here at home domestically. Politically, there is a lot of pressure on him from his base and from Republicans that he's not focusing enough here domestically. And going into the next year with the midterms, we got to get back to projecting an America First stance. I think he can do both. Mm-hmm. I'm just telling you what's going to be coming from the base. No,
that's a really good point to bring up. And in every sentence where he talks about what they're doing in Venezuela or off the coast of Venezuela, to say, and remember, this is because I'm fighting back against your child who was taken by fentanyl.
That's right.
It has to tie it to the reason why you should care and the reason why this is important for us. It's not just, I want to take out Maduro.
Right.
It's what he has enabled and done directly to so many tens of thousands of Americans, hundreds of thousands of Americans.
That said, with all of the fights and wars and successes the Trump administration has engaged in and enjoyed this year, internationally and diplomatically, the story we're about to tell you may outshine them all. The battle of the fonts at the State Department. We'll give you those details in a moment.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
I don't know. Are you fascinated by the development of personal computers in America? It's an incredible history. The Apple and Microsoft and that whole era, Hewlett Packard and development.
Well, I guess not technically, but I do think a lot about how we've evolved from the family computer to personal computers to now phones. But tell me more, Larry.
Well, there were decisions made that at the time were just sort of, Steve Jobs, let's be clear. It was Steve Jobs who made the decision that the two primary fonts that would be used in word processing at that time for the Apple computers, the two primary ones would be Times Roman and Helvetica. And it's just sort of a throwaway now. But there was a time at the beginning, in the dawn there, in the mid to late 80s, when those were your two choices, right? Times New Roman and Helvetica, which now has been sort of morphed into a more elite, condensed and streamlined version of Helvetica called Calibri, I believe is how it's pronounced. I've never known how to. You don't say these words, you just see them, right? And they were two different options. And I remember reading a whole article about Steve Jobs dissecting what he went through to determine these two fonts. It's just hilarious, actually, to go into and all the thought that he put behind them. These things don't happen by accident. But the idea was for Times Roman, it is much easier to read when it's printed on paper. But on a computer screen, Helvetica was easier to read. And if you don't know the two, I'm sure you know by now the fonts we're talking about, but Times Roman has the serifs on it. It has the little lines at the end of the top of the T and at the bottom of the ends and things like that. Just these little, the letter gets extended a little bit, and it just helps you move from one letter to the next as you're reading. But for some reason on a screen, if you look at your smartphone right now, or if you look at your word processor or any website, you'll see that all of the lettering for the most part is without serifs. It looks better on screen to be that clean, crisp, just block lettering of Calibri. All right, I tell you all of this as background to let you know that the State Department under Jake Sullivan and, Antony Blinken, and in the Biden administration, they made a major change that suddenly every State Department correspondence, whether on computer or printed, would be without serif. They would use Calibri. The Rubio State Department this week has now changed that and reverted back to Times Roman. And you would think that he has started a nuclear war.
Oh, yeah. This is the anti-woke, the latest in DEI rollback of the administration.
Right. Well, it doesn't help that conservative commentators like Michael Knowles has decided that this is like a commentary on civilization. Michael knows, God bless him, and I like Michael. He's very smart. He's very funny. But get a job, Michael, for God's sake. His commentary here: sans serif fonts in their inhuman minimalism are for libs. Serif fonts with their delightful and elegant adornments elevate the soul. This return to tradition is not only a welcome change, but literally significant. No, it's literally not significant.
Literally not. Of all the things, like we just talked about a woman evading 10 military checkpoints, get out of a war zone.
Thank you. In the dark of night.
Yes, but okay.
Nobel Prize winner.
But I will say.
But what font did she use for her falsified papers?
Yes.
That's the question.
The important thing. But can I just say really quick, they say that the sans serif, the Calibri, is better for people with like dyslexia and visual impairment issues. As someone who is currently trying to teach a 4-year-old handwriting, my daughter cannot figure out sans serif I's and L's. Like a capital I.
You're right.
Looks
yeah,
like
capital
a
I
lowercase
and
L.
it looks like a lowercase L. You're 100%
So
right.
I've just become team Times New Roman on that anecdotal evidence.
That is a great
why
point.
I actually think it was made up that Calibri helps people with vision and dyslexia. I think Times New Roman does.
By the way, my understanding that there are studies that suggest that, but it is specifically limited to screens. On printed paper, I don't think that sans serif is actually beneficial to people.
Right.
I could be wrong, but that's my understanding. For those of you who are trying to read into this and think that this is some sort of anti-woke thing and it's more traditional and it has something to do with our risen Lord or something in the Times Roman, you're wrong. I hate to burst your bubble.
The Bible is written in Times
Right,
Roman.
exactly. Let's go back to the Vulgate. No, Saint Jerome did not use serifs either. No, I sadly I have to burst your bubble. The truth is, this was all based on cost cutting. It was just determined that they were still going through the rollout and the modification of everything, and it was determined, why are we wasting all this money over a font? And so the Rubio administration there in Foggy Bottom said, enough. We're just going to keep everything Times Roman. So there you have it. And, of course, Michael Knowles, 100% right. Calibri is for libs, I guess. Coming up, a lot has been said about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. A lot of mean, unsavory things have been said. And yesterday, his widow, Erika Kirk, finally responded. We'll tell you about it next.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:37. Thanks for tuning in here on the 11th day of December as we charge forward 2 weeks ahead of Christmas Day. Coming up at 8:05, KT McFarland on that Venezuelan oil tanker drama. And then at 8:35, Michelle Kettner from Northern Virginia Magazine tells you the top 13 Northern Virginia houses with Christmas decorations. I don't ever want to be on that list.
No.
Is that wrong? It's Larry O'Connor alongside Cassie Smedile. Good morning, Cassie.
Good morning, Larry.
This is a tough story to tell. It's been 3 months since the assassination of Charlie Kirk. 3 months yesterday, believe it or not. And a lot has been said about that moment in our history. I'm still reeling from it. I still can't get over it. I'm still surprised there isn't more attention paid to it. Let me rephrase that. There is a lot of attention paid to it. Sadly, it's coming from pretty evil quarters. First, you still have people who immediately after the assassination of Charlie Kirk were celebrating it, rationalizing it, justifying it, saying, things like he got what he deserved, et cetera, that you're not going to stop. But then you've got something that we've barely touched on here because for various reasons. But it's impossible to ignore at this point. And let me rephrase that. I haven't been ignoring it. But we also make editorial decisions here about what we discuss and what we spend our valuable time talking about, what we elevate and bring to your attention. And we also believe that there are a lot of people in our audience who, focus on news, daily events, the stuff that really gets you through the day. And what Candace Owens, the podcaster and commentator, has been engaged in with regard to theories regarding what really went on with regard to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, what she believes is the real truth that has something to do with either an inside job or an international hit or just anything other than Tyler Robinson radicalized by left-wing politics and bizarre sexual fetishes got wrapped up in his ideology and led to violence, which is a pretty plausible answer, in my opinion, to what happened to Charlie Kirk. Anything but that. It's either people within Turning Point USA or some sort of international cabal involving assassins from Israel and France. And I mean, I'm not kidding. That's, if you try to follow what Candace Owens has been saying over the last several weeks, that's the kind of Looney Tunes stuff you're going to get. And through it all, and listen, people say things and they get their downloads and they get their media profile, and I get that. But we're dealing with a 31-year-old father of two toddlers who has left a grieving widow. And sadly and outrageously, during this entire sort of narrative that Candace has been trying to create, she's dragged Erika Kirk, this grieving widow, into it and suggested that she's not properly grieving, that she's not equipped to be the CEO of Turning Point, that and on and on and on. And finally, Erika Kirk has spoken out and fired back at Candace Owens. And by the way, little backstory again, I assume that our audience is not super plugged in on all this stuff. Candace Owens used to work at Turning Point, used to work with Charlie Kirk. In fact, Charlie sort of elevated Candace Owens and sort of made her a bit of who she is right now, elevated her profile to such a level that after she parted ways with Turning Point, which I believe she parted ways behind the scenes in a pretty hostile way. Charlie was done with her. Turning Point was done with her, but they made it look nice because they're, professionals and trying to be gentlemen about it. Then Daily Wire hired her. That really elevated her status, and then that ended very ugly too. So like everywhere Candace goes, it ends ugly. And now she's got her own voice and her own platform. But they used to be very close. You'll see videos of Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, almost looking like they're, flirty with each other, and which has fueled much speculation. The part of why Candace Owens is doing this is because there's a whole lot of emotion going on behind the scenes there and a whole lot of jealousy going on behind the scenes too.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they were quite the duo. It was actually odd when she started making appearances on her own and stuff. When she first came on the scene, it was with Charlie. And I think you're right, Larry. This has been the thing that I think most normal-minded people are not wanting to give oxygen to. But because Erika finally had her moment for righteous outrage yesterday in an interview, it is kind of opening up for the rest of us to say, you're not alone.
That's right. Not if people are not going to say something and stand with Erika Kirk now, I don't really know why they wouldn't. This is the moment. And again, I've been deferential. I got to tell you, this reminds me of Andrew Breitbart's death. Oh. Because immediately, within 24 hours of Andrew Breitbart's death, there were people saying that Obama had him assassinated. And I'm still connected with Andrew's widow. Not as much his children. I had been in touch with his oldest child for a while. His oldest child was 13 years old when this happened. And actually younger, 12 years old. And Susie, Andrew's widow, was devastated by these things and was terrified that her children would do a search on her husband's name and suddenly think that he was assassinated by the President of the United States. And she had 2 different autopsies. And I guarantee you, Cassie, saying this and knowing the family, knowing inside, I was in the room when the autopsy reports were revealed. I was in the room with all of the people at Breitbart and with the family, and yet I will get people on X right now who were firing off a message to me saying that Andrew Breitbart was murdered and it was a political cover-up. And people have to know what it's like to be a widow hearing that. What it's like to be a protective mother of children and then see those headlines while you're trying to grieve the loss of your husband. Mm-hmm. And so I've felt very protective of Erika Kirk through all of this, frankly, because of that experience that I had. We're going to let you know what Erika said in response finally, but really quickly, here's Blake Neff, producer on Charlie Kirk's show, because Turning Point has scheduled a December 15th live stream where they're going to fire back at all of the theories that Candace Owens has flirted with. But here is a kind of a litany of these things.
Ever since Charlie's murder, Candace Owens has leveled a flood of allegations against people at Turning Point USA, people at Turning Point Action, and people who work for this show. She's made them against some of Charlie's closest friends and against some of his most dedicated employees. She has suggested that Michael McCoy, Charlie's chief of staff, knew Charlie would be murdered, was happy that he died, and stayed silent because he was told he would be the next Charlie. She has suggested Michael is not his real name. It is. I have seen his birth certificate myself. She has called it suspicious that Mikey's wife, who works at Turning Point, helped plan the campus tour event where Charlie was murdered, which she didn't, by the way. She doesn't work on campus events. Candace has suggested the Utah Valley University event was unusual, and its details suggested a, quote, inside job. She has claimed that foreign aircraft have followed Erika Kirk around the country and that Turning Point has lied about this happening.
All right. It literally goes on and on. That's the tip of the iceberg. All right. You'll hear what Erika Kirk had to say yesterday, which is the beginning, I think, of Turning Point's response, and a little bit more on this story coming up in just a moment.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
So Erika Kirk is now engaged in a book tour. Actually, ironically, Charlie wrote a book, which I'm going to be getting for Christmas, I hope as a gift, but if I don't, I'll buy it myself. It actually released this week on Tuesday, so she is doing a book tour. This was the final book that he wrote before his assassination. And by the way, it's interesting. It's about keeping the Sabbath. It's about setting aside one day each week for rest, which apparently is something that Charlie did there, and it was huge for his family, for his mental health, for his marriage. And ironically, even before I saw this book coming out, I don't know, Cassie, you and I have talked about how we both participate in Hallow's prayer initiatives, the Hallow prayer app.
Yeah.
And if you remember the first week of Advent, I think it was Chris Pratt did a whole thing about the Sabbath and keeping the Sabbath, actor Chris Pratt. And it's like, you know what? That's a great New Year's resolution. I'm going to start doing that. And then here comes Charlie Kirk's book on the same thing. It's things like that happen for a reason, you know.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Larry, that has been screaming in my head, the connection as I've seen her do this book tour.
Yeah.
And I will say really quick, Chris Pratt's whole point is that God rested. Like, you think you're busy.
That's right.
God had time. And
God rested.
You think Charlie Kirk, like, so busy and
sorry, I got
time.
too much going on to take a day off. God rested.
God rested. Yes. Especially during this busy season. Anyway, I digress. But
that's fine.
That's incredible
right.
that you brought that up. That's been
Let's get right to Erika.
Yeah.
Cut 15 here yesterday with Harris Faulkner.
What are they taking from you right now?
Nothing. But I will tell you what they are doing. It reminds me so much of chapter 6 in the book of Nehemiah. He is building a wall, and the townspeople are at the base of that hill saying, Nehemiah, calling him all these names, saying all these things, come on down. Every single time he had the same message 4 times in a row. I cannot come down. I am busy building. That is how I feel. I do not have time to address the noise. My silence does not mean that I am complacent. My silence does not mean that somehow Turning Point USA and all of the hand-picked staff that loved my husband and my husband loved them is somehow in on it. We are busy building. And you know what I thought? I thought these people are human. We are all grieving in our own way. And they are trying to find the answer to something that happened that was so evil. They are trying so hard, and I get that. We're doing the same. Anytime we hear a lead or anytime we hear anything, we send it to the authorities. Please dig into this. No rock will be unturned. I want justice for my husband, for myself, for my family, more than anyone else out there. So for me, you want to keep telling me to come down while we're building? I don't have time for that.
A little bit more here, cut 16.
Here's my breaking point on that. Come after me, call me names, I don't care. Call me what you want, go down that rabbit hole, whatever. But when you go after my family, my Turning Point USA family, my Charlie Kirk Show family, when you go after the people that I love, and you're making hundreds and thousands of dollars every single episode going after the people that I love because somehow they're in on this, no.
You know, I have to say it. I've never seen you like this.
No, this is righteous anger because this is not okay. It's not healthy. This is a mind virus.
The focus has even gone so far as to criticize her for not revealing the burial place of her husband. And again, this is she's in her, what is she, 33 years old? She's a grieving widow with 2 toddlers. The fact that she even has to deal with this. But here's cut 20 where they talk about Charlie's grave.
From the perspective of a grieving widow, a mom, and a battle-tested American. Good to see you again today. Talk to me about this part of the conspiracies that are out there, this disturbing part that people are trying to guess where Charlie is.
Can I have one thing? Can I have one thing? Can my children have one thing? Everything was public. We will be building the most beautiful memorial for my husband at Turning Point USA, and it will be for the world to see, and it will be spectacular, and it will have basically museum style for our Charlie, for my Charlie. But can I have one thing? Can my babies have one thing where we hold it sacred, where my husband is laid to rest, where I don't have to be worried about some secular revolutionary coming and destroying my husband's grave while my daughter is sitting there praying? One thing. This is my husband. Yes, he was Charlie Kirk to the world, and I know so many people love my husband, and I am grateful for that. But this is my husband, and I want to be able to have one thing left that is sacred to our family, to my in-laws, to my babies, and to my parents. One thing.
It is really a beautiful thing to see this righteous anger and her love for her family and her children. And it makes it that much more devastating that she even has to do this and go through this. And it makes you even more infuriated at the people. And yes, a lot of the focus is on Candace Owens. I think partly because her stuff is so over the top, but also because she was in that inner circle, which makes it even that much more of a betrayal. But frankly, it goes well beyond her. There are people who are exploiting this death on the across the political spectrum, and you've seen things from Joy Reid and from Jen Psaki and from those two women that are angry all the time on their podcast and screaming, and it's just enough. Let this woman. It's 3 months, Cassie. It's only been 3 months. It's just horrible.
Right. And as she said, I mean, there is an investigation, and she doesn't want, she said in another interview, I don't want to taint the jury pool by talking about all these things publicly, but also Mary Catherine Ham, who I know is a friend of the show.
Yes.
She's really good on Twitter of talking about.
Well, she was a young widow. She was a pregnant widow when she lost her husband.
Tragic story. And she's able to talk about, she's like, you'll see widows smiling. You will see widows going to work. You will see moms getting up and surviving for their children, which is what I think you see Erika Kirk doing. She feels not just her own physical blood children, but the children of Turning Point USA, the people that are relying on them and the legacy of TPUSA and all the hundreds of thousands of kids on campuses who say we need a TPUSA. She feels this obligation to get up and put one foot in front of the other for all of us. And by the way, no one would blame her if she wanted to just go sit in a dark room.
That's right.
But she hasn't.
And that's what people are angry about. They want her to. They want her to. And you have to wonder why. Meanwhile, Tyler Robinson, the man who was arrested and I believe is responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk, he's due to be in court today, his first in-person court appearance in Provo, Utah.